So here we have quiz questions. Quiz questions happen when we're in the middle of a unit. So remember, we just went through 9 sample questions, 45%, great time for a quiz. Quiz number 1, it's going to be only 3 questions, and it's going to be from 2.1 and 2.2 sections only. They're going to be simple. They're not the hardest problems that we have done. They're going to be more of the basic ones. Quizzes are always done through ALEKS. Make sure that you do the ALEKS. Write down the questions. When you're done the quiz, make sure you take a picture of those questions from your scrap paper and email it to me, because remember, ALEKS will only grade if it matches the answer exactly. So if you messed up on a sign, ALEKS is going to be saying, nope, you didn't get any points. Since there's only 3 questions, each quiz is worth 15 points because each question is worth 5 points. They're going to be simple. So let's take a look at the practice question number 1. It's going to say solve. Notice we have an equal sign, so you have a left and a right hand side. How are we going to solve this guy? Well, this is simple, because if we look on this side, no parentheses, no like terms, it's just a constant. If you look on this side, no parentheses, we have a coefficient and a variable, no like terms. So we're done step 1, simplifying. Labeling. This side is the only side that has a variable, so that means this side must be constant. Now, we showed you this before. Because this is a coefficient, you cannot move it, since there's no coefficient side. The constant's on the constant side, the variable's on the variable side. So we don't have to move, but we have to divorce. But because our coefficient is a fraction, if you totally forgot, we're going to point it out one more time. Remember, when divorcing, if the coefficient is a fraction, multiply both sides by the reciprocal and its sign. So flip that fraction upside down. Instead of 2 over 7, make it 7 over 2. But if the coefficient is negative, you must also multiply this by a negative. So let me squeeze in the negative as well. So it's opposite, this is flipped, but the same sign. The reason why we do that is because a negative times a negative would be a positive. 7 times 2 is 14. 2 times 7 is 14. Negative times negative is going to be a positive 14. Now remember, whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So if I multiply this whole side by negative 7/2, I have to multiply this side by negative 7/2. Remember how I use parentheses to show multiplication? Negative 7/2. Now notice this is a whole number. Remember how I said if you have a whole number, you have to write it as a fraction by putting over 1. The reason why is because remember I did top was top, bottom was bottom to get 14 over 14. For us, negative times negative, you know that's going to be positive. And then 7 times 14, remember you're allowed to have a calculator for your quizzes. So if you put 7 times 14, you should get 98. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Now, we can clean this up. You know that 98 divided by 2, half of 98 is 49. And over here, 14 divided by 14 is 1W. And you know that 1 times W is W. Or if you had to divide both sides by 1, you'll still get your final answer of W equals 49. Now, since these are short questions, let me erase this so I can give you sample question number 2. The directions are still going to be solve. AD minus 5D equals negative 6. So again, notice where the equal sign is. I separate it so I have a left and a right hand side. The next thing I'm going to do is see if I have to simplify. Do I have any parentheses here? No. Do I have any like terms? Coefficient, variable? Yes. So this and this can be combined. This is a positive, this is a negative. Remember, I'm not changing any signs. I'm collecting, I'm circling. So when you have one positive and one negative, you know you subtract. we're going to get 3, keep the same label, 8 dogs, take away 5 dogs is 3 dogs. And then who wins the tug of war? 5 players or 8 players? This has the most players, so that means team positive. There's only a constant here, so we can't simplify since there's no parentheses or other like terms. Labeling, this is the only side that has a variable. So this must be constant. Notice the moving step. Constant is on the constant side, variable is on the variable side. This is a coefficient. Coefficients you never move. Coefficients, when you want to separate, you divorce. So we're going to divide now. We're going to get to the divorcing step. Since the coefficient is a positive 3, you're going to divide both sides by positive 3. So then you get D equals negative 2. Remember, negative divided by positive will give us a negative. This is solved because D is by itself. You can see they're very simple questions. They're not as complex or long as they are from the other sample questions we did. Quizzes are meant to be done in just a few minutes. They're not meant to take an hour. They're meant to take maybe 10, 15 minutes. And our third sample question for the quiz. So, notice, again, it says solve, find your equal sign, split the left and the right-hand side. Notice, on the left-hand side, no parentheses, no like terms, it's just a constant, so no simplifying here. Notice, on the right-hand side, no parentheses, coefficient, variable, constant. No simplifying there either. So now that we're done simplifying, label, the only side that has a variable is this right side. That means the left side must be constant. Negative 11 is a constant, so it gets to stay. V is a variable, it gets to stay. 4 is a coefficient, but we don't have a coefficient side. We'll have to worry about that in the divorcing step. The 5 is by itself as a constant, so we do have to move that because it can't belong on the variable side. It needs to come across the border to the constant side. Anytime that we move across the border, you have to do the opposite. So if it was a positive 5, the additive inverse would be a negative 5. If you do a negative 5 on the right-hand side, you must do a negative 5 on the left-hand side. Let me make sure I copied this right. Nope, I didn't. I switched this up by accident. So let me switch this real quick. This was the 4. No, this was the 5. This was the 4. I apologize. So what we have here, again, same steps as we went through. You did not have to simplify because there's just a constant here. You did not have to simplify here because there's no parentheses, coefficient, variable, constant. This is the only side that had the variable, this side didn't. Notice that this needs to be moved. This is not a variable. So to change it, instead of having us positive 4, additive inverse would be negative 4. If you do a negative 4 here, you want to do a negative 4 over here. These are additive inverses, so they cancel out. So you're going to get 5v. Here, negative 11, negative 4. You know that when you have two negatives, same labels, you add. 11 and 4 is 15. Who wins the tug of war? 11 players or 4? This has more players, so team negative. So it'd be negative 15. Now that we have this, variables on the variable side, constants on the constant, we can finally get rid of the coefficient. So what we want to do is divide both sides by the coefficient. It's a positive 5, so you divide by a positive 5. No opposite signs here. This is a 5, positive, this must be a 5. Because positive divided by positive will give you 1v, or just v. Negative 15 divided by positive 5 gives you a negative 3. There's your 3 sample questions for the quiz.